The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the seas and the waves. People will die in fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that day catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times, and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord. When I was out visiting my parents in Arizona last week, on a particular night, they said there was going to be a lunar eclipse. Maybe you saw it out here as well. And they said it was going to be the longest eclipse of the moon in 600 years. So I said, well, that sounds kind of neat. I'm going to stay up for that. And I looked it up, and it said it was going to start at 11:02 p.m. So I went out there at 11:02, and sure enough, there was this great big full moon in the sky, but nothing was really happening. And I kind of squinted and said, well, I don't know, maybe that's the shadow of the earth going across the moon. It's not exactly something to stay up for. And I stayed there for about 20 minutes. It wasn't that exciting, and I went inside. But something told me that maybe I should look it up again, and I did. And I realized I had the time zone wrong. It actually began at 12:02 after midnight. And so I stayed up for a whole extra hour and began to see it. And then I saw the eclipse, and that was worth seeing. You know, I was filled with many emotions when I saw this eclipse. Certainly wonder and awe at the beauty of God's creation and curiosity about how eclipses work and when they happen. But I think the one emotion I did not experience was fear. Because, maybe it's our modern scientific mindset, but when you can calculate so exactly the timing and the duration of an eclipse, it kind of loses some of its mystery. It feels like something you can control. Maybe if we lived in a pre-scientific culture, there's a story about an explorer who once scared a group of natives because he knew an eclipse was coming, and he said that the moon was about to disappear, and it did. But Jesus today talks about the signs that are going to appear in the moon and the sun and the stars, signs that are going to be so intense that people are going to be dying of fright in anticipation of what is going to come into the world. That must be something rather significant, much more than this lunar eclipse I saw last week, which was okay. And, what is Jesus talking about there? Well, he's using what's called apocalyptic language. It's a lot like the language of the Apocalypse, the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, which uses very dramatic language about all these signs up in the heavens, the wars and famines and plagues on the earth, to describe a spiritual reality, a spiritual battle that takes place in heaven and on earth every day. Apocalyptic language is not meant to be taken literally, as if it were a play-by-play commentary on what's going to happen. Sometimes we see Christians getting that wrong, trying to read the Bible into every current political event or war that's going on at the time. It's not to say it has nothing to do with current events. Jesus was preparing the people to say, hey, this city is about to be destroyed. And it was a few years later, in 70 AD, the Romans came in and destroyed the temple. And so Jesus was warning the people about that. And he was, and that's why, he says, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. But more importantly, Jesus was pointing to a spiritual drama that was going on underneath all those events, that underlies all human events, the reality of sin and redemption. When I saw this eclipse last week, and I got interested in eclipses, so I started looking up information. And I found out that on April 8th, 2024, in just a few short years, the Great American Eclipse is going to take place. And it's not an eclipse of the moon, it's a total eclipse of the sun that will be visible from many modern American cities. And it'll be visible like in a 20-mile stretch across the country. You have to go up to northern New Hampshire or northern Maine to see it. And I've already decided I'm going to take the day off. You can come with me if you want. We'll get on a bus. We're going to go up there to northern New Hampshire because this is like a once-in-a-lifetime event. They estimate that only 1 in 10,000 people ever see a total eclipse of the sun in their lifetime. And it's a remarkable sight by all accounts where the sky actually turns dark in the middle of the day. You have this wheel of fire behind the moon kind of dancing in the sky. It must be an amazing thing to see. But I'm sure that as 2024 gets closer, some prophet of doom out there is going to start predicting, well, this great American eclipse, that must predict the eclipse of America, or April 8th, 2024, that's going to be the end of the world. Jesus says that many false prophets will come in those times saying, it is time, he is here. Do not listen to them. Rather, listen to the true prophets who point the way to what God is doing in all of these signs. In the season of Advent, we spend a lot of time reading the true prophets, people like Isaiah and Jeremiah and John the Baptist, people who prepared the way for the coming of the Savior, who are able to see, look, this is what God is doing. Even though things might seem dark right now, even though it might seem like God's plan is, we don't even know where it is, look, this is what God is doing. He's preparing for a Savior. He's about to raise up a just shoot who will restore the fortunes of David. Look, God is doing something here. And true prophets are always able to do that. It's not even always about the future. It's about the prophets looking at all events, past, present, and future, and able to say, look, this is what God is doing throughout. This is his plan leading to salvation. I remember when I was a newly ordained priest 12 years ago, I was wondering where I was going to be assigned for my first parish assignment. And my grandfather said, Matthew, I think you're going to go to Keene. And I said, well, Grandpa, that's entirely possible. That's one of those places they often send new priests. And he said, no, I'm a prophet, and I prophesy you are going to go to Keene. Well, I got my first assignment, and I was assigned to Laconia. So I had to call up my grandfather and tell him he wasn't a very good prophet. And that's what often happens when we try to predict things according to our ideas or our plans or our sense of things. We don't often see God's whole plan. We sometimes see just a little part of it, or we see things from our perspective. But we don't always see the whole thing that God is doing in our life. Sometimes we don't see it until it's all over. When I was out there, not to rub it in, but I was 85 degrees in Arizona, so I was in the swimming pool every day. And at night, I would go to the hot tub, and I would look up, and every night there was these 3 bright stars in the sky next to the full moon. And I knew they were planets. And I took a college astronomy course once, so I said in my wisdom, that has got to be Venus, Mars, and Mercury. Well, later on, I looked on my app I have on my phone, my Star Guide app, and it turned out they were actually Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus. I had all 3 of them wrong. And again, sometimes we do that when we try to read too much into the signs of the times, when we try to figure out things from our perspective, we often get things completely wrong. It's true prophets that are able to say, no, this is what God is doing. He is leading us to salvation. Look at his plan at work. Even when things don't seem like it, when things seem dark in our life, when there seems to be an eclipse of the sun, where is God? Prophets are able to say, here is God. God is at work in our life. And we have to put our trust in that, even when it doesn't seem like it. We can trust that God, who is the creator of the stars of night, who sees all of human history in a single span, who to him 1,000 years are but a day, he has the whole world in his hands, and he has our lives in his hands as well. And so even though the sun should fail or the moon turn to blood, God's love endures forever, and we can place our trust in that. And so this time of year, yes, things seem very dark. Things are getting dark early in the day. Things are cold. It's very easy that some people will experience seasonal allergies or seasonal affective disorder this time of year. Things do seem dark. And sometimes in our lives, things seem dark. Sometimes in the world, things seem dark. And there is this great drama taking place. Sometimes sin and evil seems to grow in our world, but so does goodness. So does holiness, God raising up saints. And all of that does create a real drama at work behind everything, but always leading to salvation. That's why Jesus says, when you see these things take place, raise your head and lift your eyes, for your salvation is near at hand. The best way to see God's plan in our life is to always be ready to know that he is coming one day, whether it's in 2024 or much later or some other time in our life. He's coming for us all eventually. And we have to be ready for that time. We have to conduct our lives so as to please him, so that when he does come, we are ready. And in the meantime, we are waiting in joyful hope for the coming of the Lord.